of the cost of one well. So that's in the neighborhood of about $750,000 to maybe about 1.1 million, something in that range. So we assumed the low end of that range when we did the model. So with that, our recommendation tonight is that we proceed with making a contract award to Keller Excavating that's contingent upon the city receiving a loan from the state of Iowa. So I'd be happy to answer any questions. I also have here in the audience with us tonight, Rob Baker from HDR Engineers. He's the engineer of record for Division 2 on the project. So either of us would be glad to answer questions.
Questions?
Is this a technically difficult project to build, or is it pretty much dig the well and then run the water lines?
It's not overly complicated. Yeah, I would agree. This is not a terribly complicated. It's just big. There's just a lot there.
And it's interesting to me. Sometimes we see some pretty significant disparities between the bids, and the contractors are basically figuring out how far they have to run these pipes. And you have cost of material and cost of labor, and put in the equation and you get a number. And these numbers are very close. So I think that should give council some confidence that this is probably as good as it gets. And there aren't a ton of contractors who even have the horsepower to do a large project like this. So I think that's important to know.
I concur.
Other questions? John, in the report, it says that this project was bid previously and it was 6.7 million and the estimate was $5 million.
Mm-hmm.
And now we're going from 6.7 to 10.2. What changed?
4 years of COVID.
COVID, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
So the scope didn't change.
The only thing we changed in the scope, and we thought it would help, the original bid, we had a dedicated generator to serve the well field.
Right.
We took that out, and now we're going to provide emergency power from the existing generator at the water plant. But it looks like, well, obviously did not improve it, at least not enough that we can even see it in the bid prices.
Put it back in.
Yeah.
So I see on page, I think it's page page 3, $90,000 estimate for dewatering, low bid $700,000. Again, I'm just going back to my previous career. I understand that a judgment was made in terms of doing a lump sum versus unit price. Is there a reason why there wasn't both a unit price and an alternate for doing, a lump sum? I mean, so obviously I get the contractors taking risk, but man, that's $600,000. That's a lot of money that would help our ratepayers and also project costs. Now I get they're taking the risk, but can you help council understand that? And is there any option to go back to the contractor and say, we'll share in some of this risk, or we'll share in this risk to try and save money?
It's always a possibility to negotiate something if the contractor's willing to. As far as why we chose one way or the other.
Well, you didn't.
Well,
according to the report, HDR did.
All I would offer, and maybe Rob has a different perspective, but hindsight is 20/20. We know what they would have done. We made our best guess going into it, and that's what we got.
Well, soapbox 2.0. We're the client, and I just don't feel like the city is getting service on some of these things, and now we got to do it, recommending it, but decisions are being made that are costing the city and our ratepayers a lot of money, and it's just disheartening. And I get that we have you're right, Brown, when COVID is really, scrambled, I get it. But it just seems that a company of that size, that they would understand what's going on in the marketplace and get a clear picture, but not this huge discrepancy. And I appreciate the fact that they own up that they had a bad estimate. But the point is that it's on us to pay, not them. And I'm not asking that they pay it. I mean, the point is that there's just, sorry,
So John, do you want to talk to the HDR representative, or, I mean, the
yeah,
bid is sort of what it
I'd
is.
love to, well, yeah.
I don't know. I hear you, but I'm just trying to understand, what do we do now?
Well, obviously the risk of rejecting it and going out again and getting the same escalator. The only thing I would ask is that with the contractor, this is not with HDR, but the contractor, and they have been a good contractor, and they've done a lot of work with the city. So I didn't know if they would be interested and willing to try and help if there was some basically relief in contract, this from contract negotiation. It's got to benefit both parties.
Right.
That
Right. And they did offer that their electrical sub had some suggestions that they thought
value
could be
engineering.
cost saving ideas. And so we do intend to explore that with them.
And maybe that's one thing that can be explored with Keller. I'm done.
Explore what the mayor is suggesting too. Can you explore what the mayor is suggesting?
Yeah, on the dewatering. Yeah, we can have that conversation.
And the answer may be no, but the point is it doesn't hurt to ask and just tell them, what can we do to try and help this, given the fact that you have a $600,000? Yeah. Anyway.
We do a lot of work with Keller.
Yeah, and I think they've been a very
I agree.
good contractor. And the point is that, so I'm just trying to be defensive of our ratepayers. And the fact is, we have projects that are not going to be able to be done because of this bust, essentially, or delayed. Right. My apologies. It's a rare night. All right. Is there a motion?
Move alternative one.
Second.
All right. Roll call.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye. Aye. He doesn't get two votes.
There are other places where I would exercise the extra vote, but not on this one.
Thank you. All right. Move on. Item 29. And Johnny, you want to do these together, 29 and 30 both?
We certainly can.
My understanding that these kind of inform one another. Is that correct? Or
They do kind of fit
Right.
together. So now we're going to switch from securing additional drinking water sources to improving the way that we treat that water once we're done with it as a community. So we've had a lot of conversations between staff and council about the nutrient reduction modifications at the water pollution control facility. Last summer, you awarded a design contract to Strand Associates to prepare the plans and specifications for the first phase of that project. So since then, we've been diligently working with the design team at Strand to develop first this conceptual design for the project. We've had an internal staff team that include operators, maintenance folks, our staff engineers, supervisors, all working closely with Strand. We've toured a number of treatment plants across the Midwest, looking at treatment technologies and specific equipment types and manufacturers. And all the results of those meetings is the conceptual plan that's presented here as the facility plan. So with us tonight, virtually, are key members from the Strand team. Travis Anderson is the project manager with Strand, and with him is Nick Bartolario and Jenny Ruddy, two of the lead engineers on the project. So Travis is going to lead us through that facility plan. And Travis, if you are ready, we will let you take it over.
Sounds good. Good evening, everyone. Just want to make sure you can hear me before I get started.
Yeah, we can hear you well.
Okay. All right. So yeah, as John mentioned, I'm just going to give a brief overview of the nutrient reduction facility plan. Agenda for our slides here tonight. I'm going to just talk a little bit about the project goals and then kind of walk through the progression of our facility plan development with the flow and loading projections, the technology evaluation, and then a discussion on what was decided regarding phasing the project. And then we'll wrap up with schedule and answer any questions that you might have on the project. So the project goals really focus on two key items. One being the nutrient reduction targets as a part of the Iowa nutrient reduction strategy, and the second being replacement of aging infrastructure and equipment and infrastructure at the plant that is no longer meeting the capacity for the projected flows and loads. So starting with the Iowa nutrient reduction strategy, this is being implemented to reduce nutrients that have harmful effects on Iowa's waterways all the way down through to the Gulf of Mexico. And a requirement of that is that major wastewater facilities need to reduce both their nitrogen and their phosphorus discharges. And the table there shows the reduction that's required for the Ames wastewater plant. An issue with the city's current infrastructure is that with what you have in place, although it's performed very well over the past 35 years, it's not feasible to transition that infrastructure over to biological nutrient removal in order to be able to hit these target goals. Another issue is just that, as I mentioned, the equipment and infrastructure is aging, it's starting to see structural deterioration, and in several instances, it's not capable of meeting the capacity that's required to allow the city to keep growing. So that's why this is really, this project's really necessary for both these key reasons, the nutrient reduction targets, and then just to get the plant up to the capacity that it needs to keep serving the city and to replace infrastructure that's just worn out due to age. So we went through our facility plan development in several different phases, delivering tech memos to city staff to get their input as we moved along. Started with some special sampling and data analysis and modeling, kind of to serve as our foundation for future evaluations. And then we got into the technical and equipment evaluations. As John mentioned, we went on several site visits with city staff and came up with our cost evaluations and worked with the city staff to identify what technologies would be most appropriate moving forward. And then from that point, we were able to develop our conceptual site designs and kind of lay out where the new infrastructure was going to go on the existing site, and then finally decide on a phasing approach, because that was identified in the nutrient reduction feasibility study that was done 3 or 4 years ago, that a phased approach would be most beneficial to the city to both make use of the city's existing infrastructure for the next 5 to 10 years, and also to lessen the impact to ratepayers. So that brings us to tonight. We're at the next phase after council approval would be to submit the facility plan to DNR. As I mentioned, part of the initial foundation for the study was to develop flows and loads, but to do that, we had to look at population projections. So we used the city's comprehensive plan and extrapolated that out to year 2045. So we're looking 20 years out from when construction will occur, and that gets us to the year 2045. And then we use that to develop our design criteria. So our flows and loads, which the new infrastructure will be designed for. We won't go through everything in this table here, but just as an example, if you look in the middle column here, you see the current basis of design for what the plant is designed for. And then for these maximum wet weather flows and peak hourly flows, you'll see that the 2045 basis of design is increasing. So we're needing to design the new infrastructure to account for the growth in the city, to allow those additional flows and loads to be treated for the next 20 years. One of the major components for the upgrades are the headworks. So this includes the screening and grit removal processes at the beginning of the plant. And so this is a really critical component as it protects all the downstream equipment at the rest of the wastewater facility. And there are some capacity shortfalls there, and just as shown in the photos here, equipment that is worn out, that's obsolete, and is not going to be able to treat the peak flows for continued city growth. So the plan is to replace this existing screening and grit removal equipment with more efficient technology, more effective technology, and that will both increase capacity and reduce operation and maintenance time for city staff. And then another large component, of course, is the nutrient reduction improvements themselves. So right now, the plant has trickling filters, which have worked very well for the purposes of your current permit, but with the nutrient reduction requirements, a different technology is required. And after site visits and a lot of evaluation and discussion with the city, along with modeling, a process called simultaneous nitrification denitrification was selected for design. And that is a process that uses lower dissolved oxygen in a conventional activated sludge system to remove nutrients from the wastewater. A design component that is being incorporated, though, is to be able to operate that system under a conventional biological nutrient removal mode, and that's what you're seeing in these graphics here. We're kind of combining two different treatment schemes and incorporating enough flexibility so that the city can trial both of these different biological treatment methods to determine what might work best, what is most efficient in the long run from both an energy standpoint and from a nutrient removal effectiveness standpoint. So we're trying to incorporate as much flexibility into the design here as possible for the city moving forward. And as I mentioned, the project is being phased. The initial plan identified in the nutrient feasibility study was to use 3 phases. So we looked at that option as well as doing the project in 2 phases. And there were several benefits to doing the project in 2 phases. It saves on capital costs from minimizing the amount of mobilization and demobilization time that contractors would have. Operationally, it'll be easier on the city's operations staff from just not having to go through another round of construction upgrades, which are always difficult from an operations standpoint. And just from a redundancy standpoint, constructing in 2 phases allows for the first phase to add more capacity to the plant. So with that larger first phase, it takes some of the pressure off of that aging infrastructure that we've been talking about by adding more infrastructure in that first phase to be able to handle the increased flows and loadings. So this graphic shows how the project will be phased, with blue being the first phase. So we've got the headworks improvements and the activated sludge improvements. Note that we're relocating the administration building to make room for the new nutrient removal activated sludge system that was determined to be the most cost-effective option in the long run, because of how the site's laid out. And then we have shown here in green, this is not part of the proposed 20-year project, but we thought it was important to note that there is still room for expansion at this site beyond the 20-year time frame. And that was another advantage of the layout that was decided on here.
What's the benefit?
So this kind of this table expands on the phasing discussion regarding costs. So this was part of the phasing evaluation where we had one fairly large initial phase, and then In the three-phase option, approximately 5 years later, you'd have a $10 million project and then finally completing the project in phase 3. And again, as I mentioned, it did lower costs and improve operational flexibility by just using a two-phase approach. So in discussions with city staff, that was selected as the preferred option to go to 2 phases. And then wrapping up our slides here is just the schedule for moving forward. So with council's approval, we'll submit the facility plan to the DNR and continue proceeding into detailed design. We'll work through the design process through the rest of the year with bidding the project in spring of 2024. And because this is such a large project and lead times have gotten so long, we're anticipating this to be about a 2.5 to 3 year project. And that will be determined closer to the end of design once we have lead times firmed up with all the various manufacturers and material suppliers. So I know that was a quick overview with a lot of information, but our team is certainly happy to answer any questions that you might have on the project.
Questions?
Yeah, could you clarify? I'm having difficulty sort of teasing this out. Maybe it was on that prior slide that if we didn't do any nutrient reduction and we just did the upgrade to the facility to replace aging equipment, what is the nutrient reduction aspect? What is that portion of the total cost? Is that possible to tease that out?
So that would be in this.
Yes.
So yeah. So you could tease that out of the table here. So it's roughly if we just look at phase 2, it's the 27 million in phase 1, and then the $30 million for phase 2.
So when I started on council 10 years ago, I think the number was somewhere around, can you help me on this, John? It's like 26 million, 30 million, something like that.
In that ballpark.
10 years
something
ago.
like that, yeah.
So the nutrient reduction now is adding another roughly $30 million. Am I summarizing that properly?
Yeah, the one thing that is included as a part of that nutrient is the expanded capacity of the plant as well,
Right.
which we would need to be doing something.
So, I mean, I think this is really a terrific idea that if we're going to do this nutrient reduction, we do it in a way that is thoughtful and allows us to leverage those dollars into making necessary improvements for the long term anyway. So this seems like if we're going to have to do this, I've been very clear. I think this EPA mandates a giant boondoggle. The role of municipal runoff is, depending on the source you look at, 3 to 8% of what goes into the Gulf. And if we took out all of the city runoff, there would be no noticeable impact on the Gulf. And the last number I saw for the state of Iowa was $2 billion of burden on municipal governments, $2 billion, and for no noticeable impact. And so this is one of the worst boondoggles I've ever heard of. But if we have to do it, I think doing it in a way that improves our facility for the long term makes a tremendous amount of sense. So this was very interesting. And if we're going to have to do this, let's make a good project of it. I think this is quite exciting.
Any questions? Just to summarize, John, so our cost estimate in the CIP was $77,900,000.
Right.
Now with the phasing and the system you're picking and moving the administrative building, we're up to $80,010,000. So remind the council how we're going to pay for this. Now we're talking about the sewer fund. Before we're talking about the water fund. So there's another $2 million here. How are we going to finance this project?
So the project is going to be funded through, again, a loan from the state revolving fund. This specifically is the Clean Water SRF loan. Specifically, the impact on rates from switching to 2 phases instead of 3 is essentially a wash. And the reason I say that is in the CIP, you saw the first 5 years, but when I do show you the rate model, I'm giving you 10 years. And so what you haven't seen on a CIP page yet was that in years 6 was design and years 7 and 8 was construction of that second phase. So that money was already programmed in over the 10 years. We're just collapsing that essentially into a single construction project up front.
So that's good. So Mayor, this is a good time to talk to our engineers, because when you bid it out, you probably don't want to see us come in $20 million over the
No, that was,
estimate, right?
that was my, that's actually my question is,
How
what's
confident
your
are
level
you?
of confidence and how are you arranging or how are you estimating for phase 2, which is out so far in the future, and help us sage our apprehensions on what we're seeing in terms of huge cost overlays? How are you building this in? And because the point is, if we're coming back and it's $100 million, then I mean, phase 2 may be something that is a future council and a future mayor is dealing with. But the point is that I think all we're asking for is accurate, reasonable budgets so we have an idea, because the point is you're asking us to choose a council to choose a solution tonight. There's no going back, right?
We are committing to it once.
You're committed to that tonight. So the point is that this is a nodal point here in this project. And it's also, in my opinion, I'm saying we're agreeing to 82 million, not $102 million. And so if they don't feel comfortable, they think, well, we think it's close. How would that affect your decision going forward if in fact there's a safer option to go with from a cost standpoint and accomplish a similar thing?
Yeah, so maybe I'll let Travis respond to how they cost estimate, and then I can talk about how I manage that in the rate model.
Yes, so at this point, we did include some inflation adjustment factors to account for the recent increases in costs that we've seen. Certainly the last 3 years, we have seen substantial increases in construction costs. I would say just anecdotally, to the tune of probably a 20% increase in construction costs from 2020 to today for a variety of reasons. So we've taken that information from our recent bids and incorporated that using factors into this project. Certainly if inflation continues to increase at 10% a year, then that would change this phase 2 number. But hopefully that is not going to be the case. But I would say that we have adjusted to the best of our ability these costs based on where the market is at now with the recent cost escalations that we've seen.
Yeah, and so the costs that are shown in this table on the screen here, those are all in fourth quarter 2022 dollars. So when we prepare the rate model, I'm building in an assumption that there will be inflation that will average 3.5% per year. So that's the assumption that's built into the rate model. If we, as Travis indicated, if we see inflation continue to go at 8, 9, 10% a year, the rates will need to accommodate that.
So are we hearing that this budget is based on if you would have bid the project fourth quarter of 2022?
That was when the cost estimates were finalized.
So what's the current cost estimate for an estimate?
Were there any other questions?
Yes.
Okay.
Can you hear us?
I can hear you now, yes?
My question is, according to this chart, the costs are based on if you were to have bid the job, this project, fourth quarter of 2022 is being bid in second quarter of 2024. So that's 2 years. So is there additional cost adjustments that need to be made in this budget to accommodate for when you are going to bid the job for phase one and also for phase two?
So in the rate model, there is 3.5% per year built in there. So we have escalated it to that degree.
I'm more interested in what they have included, because every design professional basically puts a marker in saying these are as if you were going to bid it this time or this time. I'm just asking, they know when they're going to bid it based on their schedule. What do they believe the expected costs are going to be on the day of the bid opening? And if these prices are for last year, then they're basically aged numbers and they need to be updated. That's all I'm saying. Is that accurate? Or are these actually your estimates for bid date 2024?
No, what you said the first time was accurate. And as John mentioned, in the facility plan, we've noted 3.5% inflation, which I can.
Well, I just did a quick calculation on the well project. It's 54% difference between when it was bid in 2019 and the bid we just awarded tonight. And you have piping that you're using other kind of, contractors. I mean, Keller might be interested in this kind of project. I'm just saying that I think that we want to make sure the council has a realistic picture, so we're not back here in 2 years and instead of it being $49 million, it's $69 million. So, well, gee, we had a bad budget.
Yeah, and unfortunately, it's going to be entirely at the mercy of inflation moving forward from today. So for budgeting purposes, we could use a more aggressive inflation number than what we're assuming. But I don't think any of us know, what exactly inflation is going to look like over the next year.
So you're not looking at the historical cost data for the last few years and basically extrapolating it out going forward then? You're just using 3.5%, which basically was historical prior to COVID.
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, that's misleading than the $80 million.
Then I think your $80 million is way underpriced there, based
Well,
on what
it's-
we have seen so far. Because the one is that we already know. Anyway,
I apologize, but I couldn't hear that.
probably better you didn't.
So to pick up on the mayor's point, if we had some concerns about the variable of the inflation, do we have the margin to hit pause on this, come back to another meeting? In other words, is it going to make it, how would it make a difference? That's what I'm trying to understand.
That's a good question.
Let's say that we played out a 7% number. Would that change our matrix for making this decision? We're sort of stuck. I feel like we're along for the ride. And so do we mitigate our risk by being more aggressive in the construction now rather than kicking things down to a phase two that would have a higher construction cost? I think that's the question I have. And if you need more time to think about that, I would understand that. Maybe we just need to breathe a little bit on that.
Or
Is there
does
a
that,
timing
or does that
aspect?
affect your rate calculations?
It would certainly impact the rate
Because you're front
calculations.
loading more of the project right away versus spreading it out and having your rates trying to keep up with it then.
Yeah, now we're paying the project over 20 years.
Right.
But yes, it would impact it.
So maybe a good question to ask too is, so are you submitting a budget also to the state, or is it just the concept that you're sending to them for approval?
So we would be submitting the facility plan at this time. It will include those price estimates, but that's not what the DNR is looking at. They're looking at the technology being selected.
So what's the problem for
No.
us delaying this? We need to table this and talk about this, I think. I think this, the report is misleading. It says that the total cost estimate now is $80 million, and that's not really true.
Well, I think it is accurate in that it says that the costs are all shown as fourth quarter 2022 pricing.
Well, unfortunately, it doesn't say it in the report. That's not what people think. And I didn't think the 77 million in the CIP was not based on the fourth quarter pricing, I don't think.
So
It's
is,
legitimate.
Actually, it was in the CIP. If you were to pull up that CIP page, there were two tables. There was a table in the narrative that was based on, at the time we wrote the CIP page, the estimates that Travis and his team had prepared for us. And we said that was in 2022 dollars. But the numbers that were shown below in the actual CIP
So is there a
table
problem
had been
delaying it till the
inflated
next council
forward.
meeting? 1 week, 2 weeks,
To the 25th.
25th council meeting. Is there a problem with submittal if we waited 2 more weeks?
Not horribly so. I mean,
Okay,
it
let's
slowed the
table
entire.
this. I'm going to table this.
Okay.
but I want to table it only if we can be specific as far as what information that we're wanting to get.
I think I want to get more information.
But what information?
I want to know, I don't know if they're going to do value engineering. I don't know if there's any other ways to cut costs. I don't know.
Well, I think to me, in
And
my opinion, I think I think that the consultant has a responsibility to provide a cost opinion, not based on last year, but based on what they anticipate the project's going to come in at in 2024. And then it's a bigger crapshoot, but what it would cost, was it 10 years down the road for phase two? It's a ways down the road.
Yeah.
And then put in the report exactly what that percentage increase are using for inflation. So a future council looks at, it, okay, we included 8% a year annual inflation. And all of a sudden it comes out to be 12%. Well, then they have a paper trail. John's got a paper trail showing what was actually used and why it went up. But it's just basically, that's part of the responsibility of a consultant, is to provide accurate budgets for what they believe a project can come in on bid date, not in the past, on a historical basis. That's really, to me, it's a moot point. I mean, that's just showing what we believe it was last quarter.
so we give you the number based on what we think it's going to be. When we-
So do we need a motion to just table
Just table
then till, okay. I'll move that we table this till the 25th.
Second.
All right. Those who made the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
So I want to be precise. And we use the word misleading, not in a suggesting anyone tried to be sneaky or
Correct.
anything, but just that if we use that variable of 3.5%, then that's going to give you a certain outcome. That's all. If I could ask a consultant something, so what I'm interested in is, do you think that there's merit in more front-loading the construction as opposed to shifting more to this phase two, if we're concerned about mitigating the overall cost of the project?
So I believe the balancing act that we're trying to work through here is impact on your current rate structure and that program that has been set up for future years versus doing more of the project now. So certainly there's more certainty if you do more of the project now, because we don't know what inflation will be moving forward. None of us knows what that rate is going to be over the next 10 years. But if we do more of the project now, then I believe that will impact the rate structure that's currently in place with sewer rates. So we can certainly adjust, we can create a table that assumes the rate of inflation that we've seen over the past couple of years. We can do that. I guess I would be curious as to, this is probably a question for John, what inflation rate the city is assuming for all future projects moving forward? Because I think maybe we would want to be consistent with all of your other capital improvements projects and your O&M expenses. I guess I don't know why we would use a different rate for this project than for all of your other projects that are in your CIP and your rate program. So John, is there a standard rate of inflation that you're using for future capital projects?
We have been using a standard 3.5% per year. And so what I'm envisioning possibly coming back with is like a sensitivity table where you can see if inflation is 2%, this is what it would do to rates. I'm assuming that that's ultimately the impact that you're most interested in. You know, what is it if it's 4%? What is it if it's 6%? So you can kind of see that envelope of what the impacts would be.
Well, that's why I think it's really important to have from the consultant numbers on what they believe on bid day for phase 1 and phase 2 are going to be. And then I think that Tim's got a really good point. What would be to do all the phase and bid at one time? Travis mentioned, I don't disagree. Mobilization, demobilization costs a lot of money on a project this size. Guys bringing their cranes in, bringing all their equipment coming in. I'm not trying to spend a lot of money, but the point is it might be best for our ratepayers to look at, is it from a standpoint of long-term, but having that financial information would give, I think, staff and council a better opportunity to say, you know, long-term, but that's why it's just so important to have what are, you know, our estimates. And I'm just going to push back a little bit to ask the city, what is your inflation rate using? In my opinion, that's a consultant's responsibility to look at the historical cost data, what's going on for construction projects. What are you seeing and what do you recommend? Because the city may be wrong. And I don't want to have the city say, well, we use what you are using in your projects. That's your responsibility as a cost consultant and are working with this stuff every day. Because the point is, that's not your area of, that's not staff's area of expertise. It's really your area of expertise. And that's where I'm pushing back into saying, look at what your projects are coming in at, go through it, talk to cost consultants, and basically drill down into it and give us some, what you believe are reasonable numbers, and then identify what the inflation rates are that you're going to be using in there. I think it's just, we've got to do that. If inflation was just 3.5%, as we enjoyed for years and years and years, we wouldn't have this discussion, but we're not having that. And the previous item, you know, showed that clearly, so.
Can I add one more question? So the state revolving fund has been a terrific resource for cities to be able to finance these projects, but they don't have unlimited resources. Do you have any concerns about how deep the well is with the state revolving fund? I mean, as other cities are also having to make these requests, any concern there that wouldn't be an available source of funding? Because that's a big deal if it's not.
Yeah, to date, I'm not aware that the state of Iowa has had to turn down anybody requesting money. They've always had enough money. Currently, with all of the infrastructure money coming out of Washington, D.C., they're looking for projects to finance.
Okay.
The state actually benefits from larger projects because that then boosts the percentage of the pie that Iowa gets to ask for in future years.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good question, Tony, because the point is on our very last item, one of the concerns that you have, John, is that going from $8 million to $12 million, you know, is that going to be an issue with SRF in terms of getting the funding? So if we go in saying we think it's going to be this and all of a sudden it comes in way higher, would that jeopardize potential for that or have more difficulty or cause us to push pause on awarding the contract anyway?
That may be another argument for doing more of the project sooner rather than later because of a depletion in the funds later.
That's my concern a little bit.
We just have to look at the impact on the rate customer.
Mm-hmm.
There was an article maybe 6 months ago in the Wall Street Journal about how cities are concerned about future bond costs for construction. And so there's a big push to try to get more of those projects done now because of the kicking the can down the road effect. That project may become impossible to finance at the higher bond rate. So that's, Travis, that's sort of what's driving a little bit of my thinking. So Travis, do you feel like you have enough direction from council? We've been a lot of different places as we come back in a couple weeks.
Well, John,
Yes, so I'll work with John, to, discuss that sensitivity analysis on inflation and how that, may impact rates and future bid costs. And we can, maybe we can add another scenario here for front loading more of those costs, into phase one. So yeah, we can kind of add a range here to kind of put some further brackets on these costs based on inflation and tweaking the phasing.
This is a big project for our city, so I appreciate your flexibility.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So Steve, you want us to table item 30 as well?
that's correct.
Is there a motion on that?
I move that we table item 30 to the 25th.
Second.
Those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried.
Good. Thank you,
All right.
Travis.
Thanks, Travis. Thank you.
All right, yep. Thanks, everyone.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Sorry, Drew.
All right, moving on, item number 31, hearing on maximum levy.
What, do I turn that on?
Good evening. We are here to talk about, believe it or not, the budget in April for the first time in a long time, I believe. So what we have on the docket for tonight is a public hearing for the max levy. This is the first of two public hearings required to approve the FY 23-24 budget. We do have a couple items that we just wanted to show quickly tonight. You start with that one for me. So this is a document that we provided council when we did the special report prior to when we got into the capital budgets and some of the operating budgets. So what this slide reflects is on the far left side, previous year's levy and collections, and you can see the city's current levy rate in the current fiscal year is $9.83, and we collected just over $33.5 million. The change in the column to the right, it shows a tax rate of $10.20 at the very bottom and a total collection of $34.8 million, which is what we discussed during the budget process. The change is at the very top of the sheet where you see $3.4 million. That's the modifications to the valuations as a result of the residential rollback change. So really the collections are the same. Dollar amounts are the same. There's just a slight modification to the levy rate as a result of the valuation changes. So just wanted to point that out. The second,
One thing again.
sorry, Steve.
The original recommendation we made you only showed a 13-cent increase. So for people questioning why is it 37, you've said it before, I want to say it again. A mistake made with the cities were notified of, mistake made in calculating the rollback in essence. We lost about $70,000. So therefore we had to increase our rate by 37 cents instead of 13. But what's happening here, it lowered the amount, remember, of taxable value. We increased the rate. Remember, sometimes we lower the rate when the taxable value is up. The dollar take to finance the general fund operations is still the $1.2 million. You understand? Even with that loss of tax base. You'll see the same number there, the same take of the 3.62%.
Thank you. So each year the city staff and council analyze the appropriate tax levies to use, This year we have a slight modification. I'm going to change the slide here quickly. There we go. So I did a bad job of putting that up there, but you can see the total levy rate is still $10.20. But instead of using the employee benefits levy that's in the middle of the page, ultimately we'll be using or proposing to use the general fund levy. And that really is just a result of some of the legislation occurring at the state and kind of projecting where really state legislation is headed. And really what the goal is to provide future city councils flexibility in determining their own tax rate. And we feel at this juncture, based on what we know, these levy rates that we're proposing provide the greatest amount of flexibility.
So the bottom line rate is still $10.20, right? Still the 37-cent increase, still the 1.26 million. The difference, if you look up, then the general levy, which is the 810 levy, is now going to go to $6.34.
Yep.
Before we made this move,
It was $5.70.
This is the one we're proposing to bring you to hearing now, right?
Yep. Yes, that's correct.
We're trying to understand what the state wants. I've heard the state wants us all to consolidate one levy. That's understandable. I don't know if that's the case. We're trying to do that. We need flexibility on what's going to happen next year and the year after from the state. So the bottom line stays the same to our customers. You need to understand that. We're moving between two levies is what we're doing.
Yeah.
You don't have the actual with the 37. We could show at the next hearing the 37 cents what it means to the taxpayer
Oh, I don't
on
have that.
commercial
but-
and industrial.
Yeah,
We could show that at the next one
Yes, sir.
because people always want to know, what does that mean to me? Now, just so you don't get confused, I know you're all listening out there. The recently received assessed valuation increases are not accounted for in this budget. The budget here is starting for July 1st, right? And that starts that fiscal year. Next year at this time, when we're putting the budget together for, believe it or not, it'll be 24, 25, is that what it'll be?
That's right.
That's when those valuations will hit. Council will have an opportunity to lower the rate to offset that increase. Because all we're concentrating on is that bottom line, how many more dollars do we need to finance predominantly the police department, the fire department, parks and recreation, and the library. There's some other scattering like inspections and some of the small animal control, but that's a lot of it there. That's how we focus on it. So I don't want anybody to think that this has taken into account those increased assessed valuations. That'll be for a year from now. Okay? We'll show you the impact of the next hearing. Make sure you understand you agree with this, what we're doing. It's a little bit of a change.
Sure.
And the increase again, Corey, on the residential for 100,000,
We'll show that at another meeting.
Next week.
but is it 37 cents?
Well, not the tax, you want to know what they're actually going to pay in taxes, don't you?
Right.
It's not, that's a rate increase, 37 cents.
We'll break it down by property class at
Okay,
the next
sure,
meeting. if
that's
that-
fine.
There was a slight, actually based on what we showed at the previous council meeting, there was a slight reduction because if you recall, the residential rebate actually went down. So it's actually, it was better than what we presented back in February.
For the residential
For
customers.
the residential
Yeah.
customers. excuse me.
Commercial might go up. We could show you both way, how we showed you before,
Yeah.
what it is now.
We can do that.
Yeah, actually, the residential went down, the commercial went up
Right.
because of the rollback. Even with our increase in our levy, they're still paying less than what they would have if the rollback hadn't been adjusted.
Yeah. And
This is so confusing.
It-
for
it
people.
is-
It's
it is
just
absolutely
absolutely
We'll
nuts.
go over it at the next meeting.
That's right.
Yeah, but I'm just
We'll
saying
have
this is
a
nuts
paper.
for people
Okay.
to try to understand this.
All right, I declare the public hearing on the maximum levy rate to be open. Is there anyone who wants to address council on this item? Seeing none, I declare the public hearing to be closed. Entertain a motion on resolution approving the maximum levy amount of $23,666,001 for fiscal year 2023, 2024.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
And I entertain a motion on resolution setting April 25th, 2023 as date of public hearing on adjusted budget for FY 2022, 2023.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. And entertain a motion on resolution setting April 25th, 2023 as the date of final public hearing and adoption of budget for fiscal year 2023, 2024.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Item 32, Corey?
Great. The second part of the public hearings that we have is related to the general obligation bonds that are included as part of the capital improvement plan. We have two hearings tonight. As you may recall, public works projects, street projects, infrastructure projects are what's called an essential corporate purpose bond. So that would be the first hearing that we're asking you to consider tonight. The second would be for a non-essential corporate purpose debt. And so that's related to park system improvements. And so we've broken those out as required by law. We've also built in some issuance and rounding costs. As you may know, this is a not to exceed amount. So we would be back with the loan agreement when we decide to move forward with those projects and present those options to you. One thing of note, there is $1 million, that is included in some of our notes related to the aquatic center that's already held a public hearing. So that was not necessary this time.
So just point of clarification, item 32 and 33 are split apart for that very reason.
Yes, two public hearings.
Thank you. Any questions? I declare the public hearing on proposal to enter into an essential loan agreement to borrow money not to exceed $11,750,000 to be open. Does anyone want to address council on this? Seeing none, declare the public hearing to be closed. Entertain a motion on resolution taking additional action on proposal to enter into a general obligation loan agreement combining loan agreements and providing for levy of taxes to pay for general obligation corporate purpose bonds, Series 2023.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call.
Aye.
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 Thank you. And I'd declare a public hearing on proposal to enter into a general purpose loan agreement and to borrow money thereunder in a principal amount not to exceed $550,000. Is there anyone that wants to address council on this topic? Seeing none, declare the public hearing to be closed. Entertain a motion on resolution taking additional action on proposal to enter into a general obligation loan agreements, combining loan agreements and providing for the levy of taxes to pay general obligation corporate purpose bonds, Series 2023.
Move approval.
Second.
Roll call.
Aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Council, I just want to just commend Corey to what, I mean, he and I have spent a lot of time talking about legislation, not to mention Steve and Brian and Deb. And I'm sure Nancy on the fringes as well too, but this has been a very, very challenging year, and the amount of work that he's put in and the creativity, and I'm just proud to say that, you know, he's being asked questions by Iowa League of Cities and other people about what's, you know, to get feedback, and he's providing models as well too. And I can't think of a more challenging year for you to have to come, you know, to a different city, but I appreciate your efforts, and we'll see what happens. They're still in session.
It's a team effort. Yeah. Thank you.
It's all right.
Thanks a lot.
All right. Moving on, item number 34, hearing on Baker subdivision. Vanessa, your report was well written. Is there any questions for Vanessa tonight on that? What do you want? Any highlights?
Well, we're excited to have the rest of the lots under construction, under contract, so that we can get forward going on some more houses. And Habitat's excited, and we're excited for what we can do at the Baker subdivision. And if you haven't driven up Grand, take a look at 1126.
Nice look.
I saw that before the meeting. Very nice.
All right. And declare a public hearing on the purchase agreement for sale of lots 2 through 7 in Baker subdivision to Habitat for Humanity to be open. Is there anyone that wants to address council on this topic? Seeing none, declare a public hearing to be closed. Entertain a motion on resolution approving the purchase agreement for the sale of city-owned lots 2 through 7 in Baker subdivision to Habitat for Humanity of Central Iowa.
Move approval.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call.
Abstain, conflict.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Vanessa. Moving on to item number 35, declare the public hearing on power plant renovations to be open. Is there anyone who wants to address council on this topic? Seeing none, declare the public hearing to be closed. Entertain a motion accepting reported bids.
Move approval.
Second.
Those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. And entertain motion on resolution rejecting all bids and directing staff to reevaluate the project.
So moved?
Second.
Roll call.
This isn't going to be one of those where it's just going to get more expensive and we're going to regret rejecting this bid. I don't know. Seeing what we've seen tonight,
We have the man who can answer that question for us right
is
here.
it just
Fair
going to get
question.
worse?
I'm glad you asked that. So this is the second time we've gone out for this bid.
Uh-huh.
Basically, this was remodeling the front of the power plant to make it more secure and then adding unisex bathrooms to the power plant as we get more and more people working at the power plant. First time, the engineer's estimate was 400,000. I think the first bid came in around 600,000. We actually removed some things, went out for bid again. This time it came in at 900,000. What staff is doing is we're looking to see what are some of those projects that we could maybe do in-house. Like, we know how to put studs up. We know how to put sheetrock up. It'll be a little bit outside their normal day in and day out, but we're going to look at being a little bit more creative so that we don't have to spend that kind of money. That's why we're rejecting bids, and we do not plan at this time to go out again.
Okay.
That's a very good question I asked Rama. Thanks. Okay. Get a motion. Second, is that right or not? Thank you. All right, roll call.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
On a brighter note,
We need some brighter notes.
yeah, well, I'm going to declare the public hearing on the refuse-derived fuel storage bin repair to be open. Is there anyone who wants to address council on this topic? Seeing none, declare the public hearing to be closed. Don, you want to just highlight this one? This is good news. Or better news, well, a little better news, I guess.
So on this particular project, we got several bids in. I'm happy to say that the low bid was actually considerably below the engineer's estimate. What we're going to be doing is focusing on basically the flooring, the roof, and then we're going to look at low-cost ways of seeing what we can do on the walls. So we've got very good bids, and we've evaluated the low bidder very carefully because sometimes in a low bid, they forget things, but we're confident that this contractor can do the work, and we're going to get a good product out of it.
Thank you. Entertain motion accepting reported bids.
So
So
moved. Second.
Thank you. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Entertain motion on resolution approving awarded contract to Newman Brothers Incorporated of Lawrence, Massachusetts in the amount of $1,428,000.
Move approval.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. All right, moving on. Item 37, entertain motion on second reading of ordinance on rezoning a portion of the property adjacent to the southwest corner of Cameron School Road and G.W. Carver Avenue, the Bluffs at Dank Bar Farms.
Move on second.
Second.
Roll call.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Moving on to 38, entertain motion on second reading of ordinance to amend the Ames Municipal Code sections 18.32, parenthetically 32 and 343, regulating parking on Bristol Drive and Hampton Street.
Move on second.
Second.
Roll call.
Aye.
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 All right. Item 39, entertain motion on third passage and adoption of ordinance number 4490 of rezoning planned unit development with master plan for 3216 Tripp Street, Baker subdivision, lot 27, from residential low density to residential medium density with PUD overlay and master plan.
Move on third.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call.
Aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Thank you. And item 40, entertain a motion on third passage and adoption of ordinance number 4496 on zoning text amendment to eliminate rooftop solar panel zoning requirements.
Move on third.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. And item 41, entertain motion on the third passage and adoption of ordinance number 4497 to amend Ames Municipal Code, chapters 23 and 28 for utility connections and fees and rural water buyout fees.
Move on third.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call.
Aye. Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. And we have 3 communications to council. The first is an email from Chase Seneff regarding Mortensen Road resurfacing.
Isn't that part of Mortensen Road, Institutional Road?
Well, it might be. Do you want us to, you want a memo back to you or have Public Works just respond
Just respond.
on our plans for Mortensen Road and that kind of stuff?
Is there a motion regarding just having Public Works to respond?
I would move that we have Public Works respond.
Second.
Thank you. Those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Second is email from Dog-Eared Book staff, downtown employee parking.
I don't understand the issue. We could write back and talk to the person. We set this up, remember, the parking in the back was longer for employees and the front was, we work with the downtown group, of having it available for customers. I guess they're saying there's not enough room, but I'd have to get a report and see how many passes we've actually sold. I just can't believe they're taking it all up. So do you want a memo back?
I think
Or
it's because they
work
just
with
got an
downtown
update.
group.
Or could staff just talk to,
We can certainly talk to
reach out to the
them,
person and
the
find out?
downtown group, because we work with them on the solution. So
I would move that we get a memo back after staff talks to the
Second.
folks at Dog Ear.
Okay. All right. Those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. And last is an email from Dan Krim regarding sidewalk gaps along Kent and north side of Bristol.
We move for a memo from staff on this one.
Okay.
Second.
Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. All right. We'll start with Gloria tonight. Council comments.
I don't have any council comments
All right.
tonight.
Tim?
Not tonight.
Nita?
None. No.
Nothing for me, thanks.
Am I the only one? Oh my goodness. Thank you guys
Go
for
for it, Tabby.
everyone who came to the joint city council meeting. They're really excited to meet all of you and kept talking about it afterwards. So thank you so much for coming.
Well, I can't top that enthusiasm, Tabby. So, but yeah, I really appreciate the invitation from student government, and thanks for setting it up. And I always wonder, can we really fill 2 hours? And we easily filled 2 hours and could have gone longer. And just appreciate the interest that student government has in our city. So, with that, entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move we adjourn.
Is there a second? All right. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you.